All that matters is...
Wrong!
This town deserves a better class.
Heavy Metal Podcast.
I'm gonna give it...
If you do not listen, then the hell with you.
Walk through the gate of consciousness. Stop flows drop from under you.
Heavy. There's that word again. Heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull? What?
There sure is, Doc. Nothing is heavy enough. Well, hello there, you beautiful mother punchers, you bastards of reality, you B40. And welcome to And Volume for All, a deeply reverent and lovingly irreverent exploration of the history, philosophy, and future of the greatest music in the world, heavy metal. So, first things first, let me go through my agenda items here real quick. History? Check. Philosophy? Check. Franz Kafka? Also check. And that only leaves one topic to go. And where we're going, we don't need roads. So it's either rural Mississippi or the future. This is episode 4, the Future-uture-uture of heavy metal. Ooh, it just felt like Charo. Thank you all for your incredible responses on Twitter about the bands you consider to be the future of this art form. The interactions I've had with so many of you about the music and artists that you love and the vigorous debate over vinyl versus CD and whether or not I should ever be allowed out in public again, this is a pretty resounding no there, have been outstanding. And I've learned a butt truck in the last few weeks and discovered so much great music that I would have never heard were it not for you. So, thank you. And in addition to all of that, if you would like to leave And Volume for All a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you know what? I'll come to your house and I'll mow your goddamn lawn, Chester. I was only planning on doing 4 episodes of this podcast, and this episode, the one you are currently listening to, right now, while mowing the lawn, Debbie, was going to be the series finale in which Tyrion Lannister would inexplicably crown me King of Westeros, despite the fact that I had clearly entered a dissociative state at the end of Season 7. But this is not the end, my only friend. Because we're just going to flip this fucker over to the B-side. Or hit skip track, if that's what you prefer. See? I'm learning. In the coming weeks, I'm going to start doing some single-issue episodes, like the metal vocal episode I teased last time. And I'm going to have some special guests. Believe it or not, I think actual humans will want to talk with me in real time about metal. And one of them might be you. No, sorry, not you. I was talking to the listener behind you there. Yep, left shoulder. That's them, right there. I'm sure you're lovely, too, but, we'll see. I could get desperate. The point is, this is not the end. This is just the end of the beginning. Or the beginning of the end. Look, this episode could be the high water mark for And Volume for All. That moment right before the pod turns to real shit. And we're living in it. It's our Abbey Road, our 98 season with the Bulls, our second to last painting Picasso did that was way better than the one that he did after that. Probably. So let's talk about the future of heavy metal today with full hearts and empty slogans, because at any moment, this podcast could easily just evolve into me ruining minor league baseball for everyone, surrounded by mediocre cubist art while Dig-a-Pony plays on an endless loop. But not yet. Not today, oh no, Lord, not today. I want to begin episode 4 where we left off at the end of episode 3, part 3, namely the mid-2000s, or as no one should call them, the aughts. Because a little before halfway through that first decade of the 21st century, I think you can see the individual threads of what will define the future of heavy metal starting to weave themselves together, and it's the beginning of what I think is a true renaissance for the genre. I would also argue that not only are we still in the midst of this golden age, but by all indications, it's just getting better. But now that I think about it, we probably shouldn't call it a golden age. Gold's not really, our color. Black age? Black age is cool, but it sounds a little bit like blockage and makes me feel vaguely racist. Maybe obsidian age, umbrous age. Ooh, dark age. Wait. No, yeah, dark age. I don't see a single downside. Whatever, we'll workshop it at the retreat in October. Every day on Metal Twitter, I see different people with wildly differing musical tastes lamenting the lack of available hours in the day compared to the sheer volume of ridiculously high-quality releases and the artists producing them. Some of them are our standard bearers or personal favorites, but an overwhelming number are new or new-ish. And no, it doesn't count if the band's dad was newish. It has to be passed down on the mother side. I see the same sentiment from doom and stoner fans, black and death fans, metalcore and prog fans, ceiling and bread fans, all saying the same thing. There is so much good shit coming out right now that we can barely keep up. It's like the zombie hordes from World War Z, or the Borg from Star Trek, if you never had sex. Which brings me to the year of our Lord, His Heaviness Iomi Adonai Haaretz, 2004. AI. Nu metal was still loitering around the gas station bathroom of popular music, and while Puddle of Mud's 2003 release Life on Display featured a #1 hit single, the album was a commercial and likely personal disappointment for the band members' parents. Meanwhile, Stained had 3 top 100 singles and a #1 album in 14 Shades of Grey, which, despite terrible reviews, only grew in numbers, adding 36 more shades by the year 2011 and transforming into a book about dirty stuff that its middle-aged audience was physically incapable of performing. Joining their 2 handsy uncles in the top 5. Why are my ice... You know what? It's never made a goddamn sound. All of a sudden I start recording, I have a little bit of ice with some whiskey in it, and it's just going fucking ham. What, do I live in fucking Greenland? Stop! But it is delicious. Joining their 2 handsy uncles in the top 5 Billboard mainstream rock artists of 2003 was the unfortunate offspring of an incestuous 3-way between pop, rock, and metal, Creed, and the only Canadians Americans don't feel guilty about hating, Nickelback.
Never made it as a wise man. I couldn't cut it as a poor man stealing. Tired of living like a blind man. I'm sick aside without a sense of feeling, and this is how you remind me. This is how you remind me of what I really am. This is how you remind me of what I really am. It's not like you say sorry. I was waiting on a different story. This time I'm mistaken for letting you a heart worth breaking, and I've been wrong. I've been down.
It's fine. It's not that bad. We were kids. We didn't know what we were doing. I will say, if Chad Kroeger and the chick from that video ever resolved whatever poutine-centric differences they were having, their children would be the most hideous mammals God has ever allowed to crawl through the filth of this earth. At this point in my life, I was 24 and rediscovering the Beatles and David Bowie and drifting away from metal toward what I thought were more fertile pastures, notable exceptions being System of a Down, Songs for the Deaf era Queens of the Stone Age, and... I wasn't really into Pantera yet, or any independent metal acts at the time, so indie rock and hip-hop were just getting me through the interim between Radiohead albums. I felt like the transition from new metal to a new metal wasn't going well. And the genre that first kindled my love of music was now the guy who opens his first beer on your couch at 3 a.m. when you're just trying to clean up after the party that he wasn't invited to. I'm sorry to call you out like this, Devin, but you gotta fucking go, man. It's late. So I checked out on metal for a couple of years because as I think you all know, philosophically, I'm really fascinated with where metal encroaches on the territory of the popular consciousness. And the metal that was popular around the new millennium was not my thing. I was therefore tragically unaware that a progressive metal quartet from Georgia had released a sophomore album that, in my current and fumble opinion, was the spark that would light the flame of the heavy metal renaissance about to be unleashed upon the unsuspecting world of popular music. Their next 2 records would be the best-selling of their career and continue to garner them, because it's metal and gardening for me. It's just me and my petunias. Petunia. Their next 2 records would be the best-selling of their career and continue to garner them universal critical praise. But I want to start with that second album. A loosely structured conceptual... I'm sorry, I thought I just said conceptual. Did I say conceptual? Check the tape. You know what? Don't check the tape. Check yourself, lest you wreck yourself. But I want to start with that second album, a loosely structured conceptual exploration of the nautical and existential themes in Herman Melville's literary masterwork, Moby Dick, a story of obsession, paranoia, revenge, and the dark side of murdering one of nature's last remaining miracles and exploiting their corpses to stave off the temporary inconvenience of not being able to read at night. 2004's Leviathan was the first in a trilogy of albums that I think ought to be considered alongside the most important triads in the history of heavy metal. In 2009, a shamelessly self-promoting music critic named James Monger, and boy, it'll be a miracle if anyone gets that joke, James Monger of AllMusic called the band one of the most original and influential American metal bands to appear in the 21st century. Upon its release, Leviathan was a ubiquitous presence on the top 10 lists of fucking every metal publication, with both Revolver and Kerrang naming Leviathan as their album of the year. In 2009, Pitchfork ranked Leviathan as 126th best album of the 2000s, but knowing Pitchfork, number 1 was Elmo Goes to the Grocery Store, as chosen by a dolphin wearing a hat, because Impenetrably Weird is a brand, I guess? That same year, Metal Sucks polled musicians and industry professionals for their list of the 21 best albums of the 21st century so far, and Leviathan was their collective choice for number 1. And finally, Rolling Stone ranked the album at 46th on their list of the 100 greatest metal albums of all time. But again, grain of salt here, because number 1 was Black Sabbath's Paranoid, Taylor's version. And I don't think I even understand that. All right, let's do this. If you've never heard it, just listen to the lyrics drummer Bron Daylor chooses to open the album with, to let the listener know, as the preeminent poet of the 21st century, Marshall Mathers, penned 2 years earlier, this shit's about to get heavy. It sure is, Slim. This is Blood and Thunder by the band Mastodon.
Yeah.
I think that someone's trying to kill me, infecting my blood and destroying my mind. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays. Mastodon came together in January of 2000 at a High on Fire show when drummer, lyricist, vocalist Octopus Braun Daler and guitarist Bill Kelleher moved from New York to Atlanta, joining forces with bassist and elder shaman to a local barbarian tribe, Troy Sanders, and lead guitarist Brent Hines, who is different. I'll get to Brent in a minute. I want to play another little clip from this album, and this is not because I think Mastodon is the future of metal, but I do think they exemplify one of those threads of this renaissance that's common among a lot of the bands that I'm going to talk about. Some of your bands, actually. In terms of the genre, Mastodon can best be described as a stoner sludge psychedelic death alternative groove thrash band who frequently includes elements of jazz, country, classic rock, and hardcore punk into their instrumentation. The four members of Mastodon brought in such a wide variety of influences to their sound. Braun was a Sabbath Priest devotee. He even thanked those two bands by name in his first Grammy acceptance speech for, quote, inventing heavy metal. He's not wrong. Bill brought in the punk sludge vibes, while Troy brought in chicken's blood and the skulls of rival tribesmen, and Brent brought some classic rock and good old southern country chicken pickin'. He started out playing the banjo, and you can hear it in his style. He plays this ominous banjo intro for a song called Divinations on Crack the Sky. And unless Ned Beatty is slowly floating down a river that runs past your front porch, it's hard to make a banjo sound ominous. Check out this weird little left turn that Brent makes on a song called Megalodon. It's strange and surprising and just exactly what it should be. I love Braun coming in with the hi-hat over that riff. It's so great. But lest you think of Mastodon as the midichlorians of metal, having come out of fucking nowhere to confuse and upset millions, I have to give credit to the scene from which they emerged. Sister bands Baroness and Black Tusk, who are kind of the Blue Cheer of this quatrain, emerged from the music scene in Georgia around the same time as Mastodon. While Baroness has had a similar, if slightly less spectacular, trajectory toward becoming a preeminent act in modern metal, Black Tusk has been both consistent to a fault and just plain old unfucking lucky. If you were to ask a stranger to listen to Mastodon's debut next to their latest album, like if you were just to walk up to somebody on the street and go, "Hey Charles, you want to listen to 2 Mastodon albums in a row?" And their name is definitely Charles, but they haven't gone by that in years, so they kind of know that you're just using them to get to the point of your example. They might not realize it's the same band, let alone an identical lineup. But then there's Black Tusk, whose first album was produced by Baroness frontman John Baisley, who also does the artwork for every Black Tusk album, as well as every Baroness album, in addition to albums for Kveler Talk, Pig Destroyer, Skeleton Witch, and Flight of the Conchords, because apparently the man never sleeps. He waits. Sadly, Black Tusk began as a little-known sludge band and remain one to this day. Of the 3 bands that emerged from the sludge of Savannah, which, by the way, was the nom de plume I chose during my competitive eating days, Black Tusk has been the least consequential as a result of being the least expansive. I don't fault Black Tusk for sticking to their lane. They are great at it. and they play sludge metal for a living. It's what I'd do if I had an iota of musical talent or heroin addiction, but they do stand out as something of a cautionary tale for those bands who hope to influence the future of the genre. And then in 2014, their bassist was in a horrific motorcycle accident and eventually had to be taken off of life support in the hospital. So their story is unfortunate, but their discography is great, and you should check them out. I really like Black Tusk. The fourth and final band associated with the Georgia sludge scene is my sleeper favorite and one of the most underrated acts in heavy metal, I think, says me. Or they were until they announced an indefinite hiatus in 2016 because everything I ever love leaves me in the end. But they left one hell of a legacy behind them, including one of my favorite trilogies in modern metal. In 2006, they released Time Will Fuse Its Worth, a full-on sludge metal head trip stitched together with psychedelic interludes. Static Tensions in 2009, in which the band adds a third set of vocals to its dueling drummers, and frontwoman Laura Pleasance begins to incorporate her haunting, clean vocal croon into the band's burgeoning experimentation with psych rock. And finally, Spiral Shadow in 2010, the bridge between Kylessa's sludgy past and the psychedelia that will dominate their final two releases. Man, that sounds shitty to say. And it's not just because I hate the sound of my own mouth. It's part of it. It's not only it. According to Metacritic, Spiral Shadow was the best reviewed metal album of 2010, with the majority of critics extolling the virtues of the band's hybridization of sludge and psych rock into a flawless synthesis of the two styles. And here is my favorite track from Spiral Shadow, Drop Out. Kylessa is so awesome. Please get back together. I'm sure somewhere they're sitting around going, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, Quinn said we should get back together. Oh yeah, let's get back together. Okay, detour complete. Let's get back to Mastodon. So after they blew the doors off this shit with Leviathan, Mastodon got picked up by Warner Brothers. And this is the point at which every metalhead thinks, oh shit. Here it comes. Bring in Bob Rock with some verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, clean singing, 4-minute ballady bullshit, and 3 albums later, we'll have to watch a documentary about their fucking feelings. Okay, go ahead. Ruin it all for us, you sellouts.
Language of the sound.
Well, that was pleasantly surprising. That is The Wolf is Loose off of Blood Mountain, a concept album about a werewolf who finds a crystal skull buried in an ancient graveyard at the foot of the titular mountain and is called upon by the gods to carry it to the summit, which was something of an embarrassment as that's the exact same concept as the album Coming Out by the Manhattan Transfer. I never got how Zindy Lou fit into the plot, but they're the geniuses. Blood Mountain was my re-entry into the atmosphere of heavy metal because Mastodon sounded like something new. My brother recommended the album to me, and because I love my brother and always follow his lead on music even when it's stupid and awful, I bought the CD. So when I first heard it, I thought, what the fuck has Hermano gotten me into here? I listened through a few times and it was just all too much for me because I couldn't hear it yet. As Friedrich Nietzsche said, new ears for new music. He also lost his mind and fell in love with a horse at one point, but he's right about the ear thing. At the time, the war for my musical heart was a battle between Arcade Fire and Vampire Weekend. And to all my goths listening out there, don't listen to Vampire Weekend. They are decidedly not the droids you're looking for. But one day I decided to give the old beard metal bastards one more try, and the album sounded disappointingly as it had before. Until I got to this. That is Colony of Birchmen, which went to number 33 on the Hot Mainstream Rock Tracks and earned the Dawn their first Grammy nomination, an award which they lost to Slayer for that one song that they've been writing over and over for the last 30 years. It also features Josh Homme of Caius, Queens of the Stone Age, and unsuspecting photographer Karate fame. Hey, and speaking of weird shit people do for seemingly no reason at all, Brent Hinds. Mastodon's lead guitarist is, well, he's the one with the tribal face tattoo, and I think that's illuminating. Honestly, he's one of the most fascinating characters in modern metal, and I probably spend way too much time hoping that he's okay. Just to give you a sense of the old yin and yang of Brent, he wrote the music for the third album in that musical trilogy that I talked about, Crack the Sky, while lying on his back in a hospital bed and then his couch, with terrible vertigo, having just emerged from a 28-day coma after he got drunk and tried to love fight System of a Down's bassist Shavo Odadjian after the Las Vegas VMAs. Shavo said Hinds was saying, "I love you, I love your bass playing," while also trying to tackle him before taking a swing at Shavo's friend. There's a weird scuffle that happened, and then Brent fell and smashed his head on the curb. In 2009, he told Spin magazine, "All I remember is walking through the Mandalay Bay with my shirt off." Yeah, see, That's the problem right there. I am fairly certain that like 98% of all global conflicts are started by a drunk guy taking off his shirt. Battle of Trafalgar, for example. Napoleon, lit up on Pinot, was like, time to freeze these man titties, no? Ha ha! There's a lot of buttons on this shirt. Huh? Fuck it, let's conquer the world! Heinz continued, then I remember being asleep for 3 days. When I woke up, it hurt like fuck. And just so you get a clear picture of Brent Heinz here, he then offered, the doctor said I had to quit drinking for a couple of months. I was back doing drugs and everything by 28 days. I love how he knows the exact number of days, like it's a Guinness World Record. You know how I said the band met at a High on Fire show? Here's how Brent remembers meeting their frontman, Matt Pike. Matt and I ended up doing mescaline and playing Street Fighter for 27 hours. Now he's one of my best friends. And of course, just after this quote, he and Matt Pike got into a drunken fight, about which Heinz later said, he clocked me in the eye, I hit him in the ear. It was just dude stuff. So I'm a dude? Do I have to fight Matt Pike? God, I hope not. Anyway, so that's Brent. And all the other members of Mastodon just openly talk about how difficult it is to be in a band with him, including Brent. He once offered, I'm sure I get on their nerves. If I was married with kids and we had a member who was crazy as fucking batshit balls, after a while, it would get on my nerves. When I was prepping this episode, my brother Ryan reminded me that he met Brent in the line to get a picture autographed. My nephew was a big Mastodon fan at the time, so when Ryan got up to the front of the line, Brent asked him, who do I make it out to? My brother said, to my son, Reese. Brent signed it and handed back the picture, which now read, to my son, Reese. Heart, Brent. Anyway, now that I've mentioned Mr. Pike and Mr. Homme, I probably need to tell you about another scene that developed years earlier in the deserts of California, specifically Palm Desert, California, where a kind of artistic collective began gathering in the arid vacuum between major cities in California in the late 80s and early 90s. Palm Desert is around 2 hours' drive from LA and San Diego, or be there in 20 minutes in California time, and offered musically inclined wayward youths a gathering place to refine and own their sound with like-minded individuals. Because when you're all taking the same drugs, you tend to be like-minded. Where does one plug in an amp in the middle of the desert, you ask? Well, future stoner metal legends Yawning Man, Fu Manchu, and this next band were asking themselves the same question. And because the answer was absolutely fucking nowhere, these industrious ne'er-do-wells embraced the limitations of their environment and innovated, as impromptu concerts began popping up in places straight out of a Charles Manson wet dream. Generator parties, as they would come to be known, were the birthplace of some of modern metal's most influential acts, including the quartet of John Garcia on vocals, Josh Homme on guitar, Nick Oliveri on bass, and Brant Bjork on drums. Originally known as Katzenjammer, a German word describing what I believe is sleepwear for kittens, they eventually settled on a much cooler moniker discovered in the least cool of places, a Monster Manual sourcebook for the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game. And as an old-school D&D nerd, I can tell you there's only one role you have to play at a desert bonfire generator party, my friend, and that is Friendzone Fred, with an intelligence of 18, constitution of 5, and all the charisma of a bugbear trapped in a perpetual death scream forever on display at the center of a gelatinous cube. This is Caius. But like the Georgia sludge scene, the stoner metal coming out of the Palm Desert was a pretty broad palette of influences, and another one of the pioneers of the subgenre formed as a trio out of San Jose, and are kind of the definition of a band that had more influence than it ever had success, until they reunited in 2018 and were, for the first time, surrounded by completely different piles of green leafy material. That band is Sleep, the astronomically high priests of Sabbath worship formed by Matt Pike on guitar, Al Cisneros, the guy behind the counter of the coolest local bookstore in every city, on bass and vocals, and behind the kit, one Chris Hawkius. Haikus. Let's go with haikus. In fact, here's a haiku about Chris Haikus. Unpronounceable. The drummer's name from Sleep. He would be replaced. But if you are one of my friends that regularly listens to this podcast and isn't a metalhead, Ken, Matt, Danny, Zach, hey, you should check out Dope Smoker by Sleep without smoking any dope and try to figure out what the fuck is going on. 'Cause that would be funny for me. Sleep's second album was a groundbreaking musical achievement that would reverberate for decades to come in the ears of its adherents. And it was pretty influential, too. This is Dragonaut off of Sleep's Holy Mountain. And with Matt Pike completing this round of 6 Degrees of Brent Hinds, let's close out Mastodon before the break. I like to think of Mastodon albums as an algebraic equation, and Brent Hinds as the X the other 3 members are always trying to solve for, because there is another side of the Brent coin that isn't just drugs and fighting and video games about fighting. Brent Hinds wrote the majority of the music for one of my favorite albums of all time across all genres, and what I think is Mastodon's magnum opus, Crack the Sky. I described the concept of Crack the Sky in an earlier episode, but just to reiterate, it's weird. But it's also a metaphor for the loss of Bron Daler's sister, whose name was Sky with a Y, the way it's spelled on the album title. Brent was pushing Bron to write the lyrics for his late sister. Eventually he did, and the combination of pain and anger that surrounds that loss is so present on this album. Crack the Sky has both an artistic scope and an emotional depth that is nearly impossible to achieve and absolutely impossible to maintain. If you're seeing any shades of my affinity for And Justice for All here, well, you're not wrong. And you'd be forgiven for thinking Wish You Were Here was my favorite Pink Floyd album, because it is, and when someone doesn't do anything wrong, I find it very easy to forgive them. All three of those albums are haunted by the empty space where someone who was close to the band members used to be. The title track features newly uncomfortable subject Scott Kelly as a guest vocalist, who before recording began an email correspondence with Bron's father about Sky's life and her untimely death. Kelly said that he put up her father's words in the studio, as well as a picture of Sky that he was given during the exchange. I'm going to read some lyrics before I play Scott Kelly's final verse on the song. The first voice you'll hear is the bassist, Troy, who sings, "Desperate heathens flock to sirens, guard your heartache well." And Kelly finishes his contribution with this line, "Mama, don't let them take her. Don't let them take her down." There's another phrase on the track that isn't in the liner notes, so I can't be certain what it says, but it's always sounded to me like the phrase, "at least alone," so that the lyrics would read, "Mama, don't let them take her. Don't let them take her down. At least alone," implying that the narrator here doesn't want his sister to go unless he goes with her. Remember that first episode when we talked about the meaning of the word heavy? That heavy is often used to refer to the sound of metal, but the original meaning referred to a subject of great emotional depth or intensity? Crack the Sky is, for me, a perfect synthesis of those two meanings. And that, among other things, is why I think it is one of the greatest albums in metal history. When we come back, I am going to lay out conceptual pillars of heavy metal yet to come, cover some of the bands you suggested may lead the way, and give you my 4 examples of artists that I believe possess the ability to weave the threads of heavy history into the tapestry of the future. When we come back. on Thursday. Did I say on Thursday? I don't think I said on Thursday. Anyway, this is sort of like one of those post-credit scenes from a Marvel movie, you know? Except not entertaining, and you don't care what happens next. Anyway, thanks for listening to the end. See you Thursday. Hopefully, maybe next Tuesday. I'll see ya.